what support do you get from all the good work that Sport Relief do?
Hey people, Doc again. Different project today. It's not motorcycle related today. It's van related. My VW T4, the rear springs are corroded and need a bit of attention. So we're going to go and change them out, see how it goes. Alright, we got my glamorous assistant, my son Logan, helping us today. So that's all he's going to do. That's a locking wheel nut. Before you jack the van up, I've got the jack underneath ready, but it's not taking any weight, as you want to slacken the wheel nuts off first. Only half a turn, just to make sure they're a little bit loose, ready for when you jack it up. That's enough. So he's just cracking off the wheel nuts one at a time, work his way round. When he comes to the locking wheel nut, he'll use the special key that's provided with the wheel nuts. You find this easier if you use a power bar like he's using, which is basically a long handled bar. This long one that he's using here. You can use the normal driver that comes with the socket set, but you'll find that it's really hard. And the cross wheel braces you can buy, you'll find they're really hard. So with your locking nut, you've got to put your locking nut key onto the nut and keep rotating until it actually sits in. You'll feel it sit in, and then these shouldn't be done up very tight at all because they're only soft castings. Right, so he's slackened off all the 5 wheel nuts, so we're going to jack up the van, and then to make safe I'm going to be using an axle stand. Always, if you're going to be taking the wheel off to do any work at all on your vehicle, make sure you've got it on an axle stand, not just relying on the jack stand. So once he's jacked up, we'll come back. Right, with it jacked up and it's nice and safe, you can see underneath on the axle stand, so it's not going anywhere. I've put the jack underneath the suspension arm and jacked him up just to clear the ground of the wheel. Logan is now taking the rest of the wheel nuts out, ready for taking the wheel off. He's swapped over to the ratchet with the socket on the end now instead of the big pry bar, because we've already cracked the nuts off. Got to move in. We're doing this on the side of the road, which isn't really ideal, but it's outside the house, so we're pretty safe anyway. So he's got one more normal nut to take out, and then he's on to the locking wheel nut then. Again, he's keeping all the nuts together in one place so he knows where they are, nothing's rolling away. You can use a little metallic nut holder if you want, like a little tray just to keep them all together. He's put the key back on, and he's taken out the locking nut. If your car isn't fitted with locking nut and it's got alloys, they are a good idea to purchase a set of 4, because it'll stop people from stealing your alloys. Right, so that's all the nuts off. So the wheel now, he's going to move the tools out of the way, and then he's going to brace himself against the wheel, one hand top and bottom. He's going to rock the wheel back and forth. You may need a bump just to free it off the hub. If you find like this one that it seems to be seized on, then what you can do is, if you come, Logan, grab the camera, just video me, you can just kick the wheel at the side and it should come off, and then that's your wheel out. So again, put the wheel out of the way, you don't want it falling over and scratching, so either lay it down or lean up against a bumper somewhere where it's safe. Right, so what we're looking for is, that's the spring there that we're going to be changing. Focus, as you can see, it's pretty corroded. It had an advisory on the MOT, so we're going to be changing the spring. The shock is dirty, but I don't think it looks too bad. So, but what we need to do, I've got it jacked up, putting tension on. I need to be undoing, clean this bolt and undo this bolt, remove that bolt, and then we lower the suspension arm down and the spring should come out with the bump stops. So we'll get that bolt off and then we'll have a look. Right, we've give the bolt head a little clean up with a wire brush. I've managed to slacken him off. I had to use the big pry bar because the ratchet wouldn't do it. So I've slackened him, but obviously because we've got this hub and the suspension arm jacked up, it's now putting that bolt under pressure. So we need to drop everything down just enough to take a lot of the pressure off that bolt, but without leaving the arm drop completely. So Logan's going to lower it away anti-clockwise. Just there, stop him. So we've got quite a bit of the pressure off that bolt now, so we can drive that bolt out. Logan's going to take over the camera. Come on this side. Just looking and finding myself another job. The shield around the disc is perished, so I'm going to have to replace that before too long. And just wind this bolt back out. It should pull out. So that's the bolt. So what we'll do now is we'll lower the rest of the suspension arm all the way down, taking note of how the spring is seated on the carrier, top and bottom. Here he comes. So I can see now that, looking at the spring, that the front curl is facing the back and the top one is facing forward. So I can lift the spring up and out, checking for any bump stops, doesn't fall down, bump stops of the rubber. So we'll see if we can lift him up and out. There he comes. Here's the old. So we'll grab the new ones and then we can compare the two. Right, knock him off. Right, so we've got the old and new next to each other. Counted the coils are okay. The stop ends are stopping the same. These are 50mm lower in springs. The ones that were on here were supposed to be 50mm, but they look a little bit lower. So we'll have to see when we put them on anyway. Right, so the reversal now to refit. Move that out of the way, I'll give the camera over to Logan. So again, we've got to keep our stop end at the top to the front of the van and the stop at the bottom to the back. It's a little bit fiddly, you've got to get him in. I've cleaned everything up and then he goes. So what we'll do now is we'll jack up, making sure that the top of the shock lines up with our hole, feed the bolt back through, and everything should be good, making sure that this is seated as we're winding him up on the jack. So Logan's going to start jacking the suspension arm back up. I'm going to check to make sure that my eyes meet up. Give him a couple of pumps. Just making sure that it's lining up as we go through. Just hold him there. So I'm checking underneath that everything is centered and all okay. Up a little bit more. Keep going. Keep going. Whoa. So you may want to go another pump. This is where we got to get this in line, and it's a bit awkward with one hand. There you are. So that's back through. So we'll tighten our bolt up, put the wheel back on, lower him all down, and check everything. But first I'm going to give the hub and the brake caliper a wire brush and a bit of a paint before we put the wheel back on. So we'll get that done ready. Alright, so there's a new spring. I'm not too worried about the shield at the moment. I know I've got to change that. That'll be done in due course. Just give the caliper just a little quick lick bit of paint just to help it survive the weather here over in Britain. So that's all we got to do is we'll jack the arm back up, put the wheel back on and do the nuts back up, which we'll do on the other side. So we'll have Logan jack the suspension arm back up now, just so we can get the wheel back on. To give us enough height to get the wheel on. See, all the springs back in, all the bolts are done back up. Again, another nice little lick of paint. Right, so we'll have a look at that. So if Logan will pass me the wheel now. Turn it. Logan's going to have the camera. Can be a bit fiddly, so as you can see what I'm doing is I'm holding the bottom of the wheel with my feet just to try and hold it in place while I get the one nut in, just to kind of secure things so it's not going to drop off on me, and then you can go around, put any other nuts in. You're only going to be hand tight at this point, just so the wheel will stay on. One more normal.
Hi, Sean.
Hiya. And then the locking nut with the key. Again, find the right one, it'll slot in. Now what I didn't do, what you can do to help yourself next time, is get yourself some copper grease or copper slip. Just put a dab on the end of the bolt before you put it in, and that'll stop the bolt from corroding inside. So that's all you do at the moment, just hand tight like that. What we'll do now is we'll take it off the axle stand, leave the tyre go down onto the floor, and then using the big bar I can tighten them up fully so they know the wheel is on and nice and solid. Right, so we got him down off the jacks, all the axle stands are out, he's sitting back on the floor. So that's all Logan's going to do now is he's putting the socket back onto the long power bar, and he's just going to make sure that them nuts are done up tight. He's not going to crank on them, but just like he's just so, a quarter of a turn. If he feels it too loose he'll go a bit further, but generally a quarter of a turn once he's on the ground, and that's as tight. You can go to your handbook for the car for the specific torque setting, but as long as they're hand tight your wheel isn't going to go anywhere. So he's just put the lock nut socket on now, and he's going to have to spin the bar to get it to drop on. Again, with these not tight at all because they are soft castings on the lock nuts, and you don't want that key to shatter. So you go around the wheel nuts again, making sure you've done all full, standard nuts, just as a safety. And always go in a clockwise pattern, starting at 12 o'clock, going round. That way you know you've done all the nuts in order. And that's it. That's how to change your rear springs on your VW T4. So we'll see you next time. So bye, Logan.